what communism and then the fall of the wall taught me is that somehow through it, I'm going to be okay. And I really mean this, I'm actually going to come out better. Now, that doesn't disqualify the incredible losses that are being felt and the price that's being paid by people around us and or even the individuals who make it through and are better. But it does mean that there's just something innately human about living and thriving no matter what.
Disinformation is spreading.
There will be a surprise outbreak.
We only have so many
the issue of pandemic.
No social distancing at all.
They said that they would express their concerns about the mask supply.
Where's the mask? Where's the glove?
One expert says a second
get away from all of these
We all need some good news.
A message for all the healthcare workers out there.
Thank you.
If you're looking for hope tonight, raise your hand. If you feel alone and don't understand, if you're fighting in the fight of your life, then stand. We're gonna make it through this.
From Santa Rosa, California, this is 19 Stories. I'm Cheryl Halling. With over 15 years of experience under her belt, Bianca Broos brings a fresh, collaborative experience to the world of business. She activates executives, entrepreneurs, and leaders into the flourishing work they can provide to the world. Bianca is also the vice president of Sonoma County Professional Women, an organization founded and run by women, whose mission is to connect with women from all professions. Whether they are entrepreneurs or working for someone else's business, the idea is to give women a space where personal connections can be at the center of their networking, while also impacting one another professionally. As if she is not already doing enough, Bianca also co-founded the Be Better Network North Bay, a local digital hybrid networking platform for professionals. I'd like to welcome this one very busy woman, Bianca Broos, to 19 Stories.
Thank you, Cheryl. What an honor to speak with you. And thank you for the invitation and that beautiful introduction.
Oh, you're very welcome. Well, how are you doing today on this gorgeous winter summer day that we're having here in Sonoma County?
I'm doing well. And, for the last few days, I've been saying I'm loving this weather. I'm a summer girl. I grew up in Eastern Europe where winters were very, very harsh. So being in Sonoma County, it's the perfect climate for me. But these last few days being so unusually warm have just given me a little bit of a pause. It's certainly on brand for for the things we've been through. Everything seems to be just a little bit more unusual than normal, but we're making the best of it, and I'm actually enjoying the weather.
Yeah, it's a nice break, and yet I completely hear you. This morning I looked outside and it was so windy. And for the listeners who don't realize, we're both in Sonoma County. And I think what Bianca is alluding to, and certainly what I'm speaking about now, is the fact that whenever you have unseasonably warm weather or early hot weather in the season and mixed with winds, as we did this morning, we kind of have this Pavlov's response, if you will, of, oh gosh, does this mean another fire?
Yeah.
Is that what you're alluding to?
Yeah, and just overall, the warmth in a season when it's supposed to be cold, and I think in Sonoma County we have, probably due to the fires, we've just been through so much, and then you pile on that on top of that what we're going through globally with the pandemic, our shift in national unrest that we've been experiencing in the last year or so. It just is so much that it's difficult to know what quote unquote normal is. And I think we crave a little bit of normalcy. And so having to make the best of things that are not quite right can be really exhausting. And I can imagine people just kind of feeling exhausted.
Yeah, the fatigue. There's so many pandemics, if you will, going on at the same time that are in addition to the virus, economic, political, etc. And I really appreciate the fact that you took time out of your busy schedule to talk with me, because given that you are my neighbor here in Sonoma County, and we've been experiencing the same shelter-in-place directives, How, if at all, because you seem so very busy, and that's not the case for a lot of people. I mean, people who are homeschooling and, had to learn how to work from home, who haven't worked from home, that of course lends itself to being busy. But how has this affected either your business or, how you've been able to move about the cabin, so to speak,
Mhm.
given that you seem to have a lot of projects going on?
Yeah. So, I think that this pandemic and the impact of all of these different unrests, you mentioned different pandemics. Never thought of it quite that way. But yes, these things that we're experiencing in our communities, in our world, they've impacted all of us. I don't think there's a single person that I know who is not impacted by what is happening. And I think that is a good thing because it highlights how much we are interconnected. It highlights how much we need one another, and that being a human being on planet Earth is not a solo endeavor. So I think it's actually, if there is a beautiful thing that comes out of this, I hope it is that. But yes, personally and professionally, I am just as busy, quote unquote, as I've ever been. And that is in part because of what I do and why I do what I do. So I'm a business and branding strategist. So when something happens in our world that impacts people and businesses, they need to reshape that conversation for themselves and for their audience. And so the moment this shelter in place hit the first time around back in March, I remember my very last in-person meeting and leaving that conversation with the understanding that we are going to have a lot of work to do because I see business as a force of good, and I see business as an expression of who we are as business owners and professionals. So being able to really reshape that conversation is what has kept me busy.
Well, that certainly seems to be the theme too, is learning how to reshape or pivot what we do and how we approach things. And the last time that I actually saw you in person was well, not in person, online rather, was this super fun event that Bianca Broos Company, which is your company, sponsored on behalf of the Sonoma County Professional Women's October Confab, called Boas and Brew.
Yes.
Can you tell our audience, first of all, about Sonoma County Professional Women and how you came up with that idea?
Yeah. So Sonoma County Professional Women is an organization that is largely made up of women who are either owners or founders of small companies or are professionals in other people's companies in our community. And our community is largely a small business community. So when this pandemic happened, every single one of our members was impacted dramatically. Either they professionally, either they were almost immediately had to pivot and rethink how they do business, or they were inundated with work and didn't have the capacity to take it on. So we were dealing with women who needed the organization to support them. At the same time, the stresses for women and professional women to then, if they have families, to then, and children in school, to then take care of those children who are now learning from home and working from home and running everything in a new setting, that presented itself as a large challenge. So what we were seeing as an organization is that women were just stepping away from the connection and the networking because they didn't have the time and they were juggling so much.
They had life to deal with, yeah.
Yeah, that life to deal with. So we pivoted as an organization to support our members, and what that looked like for us is to kind of shift gears a bit and shift down rather than amping it up with more Zoom calls, more outreach, more presence required. Really saying we're going to be here and we're going to stand still, but we're going to shift gears and give you all ladies a bit of space. And that looked like then to just do a few events every few months. And so my company had the experience, we've had the experience of creating virtual events in 2020. So from March, by the time we did Boas and Brew was October. And so I had this idea of reaching women and saying, let's have a little bit of fun. Let's also teach you, because you're professional women, let's teach you how to be in front of your audience, right? Being really standing out and creating experiences. And then let's have it be educational. And so Boas and Brew came about, and we were very, very glad that we were able to sponsor that. And we had a wonderful reach and then also a great attendance for us as Sonoma County professional women. So I was very, very pleased with that event. And it showcased really that we need connection. And also in these times, it needs to be meaningful and it needs to be connected to an experience so that we can really feel that we've gotten the most value out of our time spent.
Well, the one thing, oh, wait, there was many things that I loved about it, but the one thing that was so enjoyable and incredibly generous on your behalf is that you sent out literally feather boas with a coffee card to a well-known coffee company so that all the women who attended were wearing these beautiful yellow boas and drinking their coffee courtesy of Bianca Broos company. And for me, and what I noticed, with other women, I know by October, oh my gosh, most of us have we put on real clothes for a while? I mean, we've all heard and seen the stories of, you get dressed up from the waist up. And because I do voiceover and podcasting from home, a lot of times if I am on camera with someone, I have my sweats on the bottom. That's nothing new for me. But what it gave these women a chance to do is to get dressed up and feel good and feel like we're connecting beyond just, oh my gosh, getting up, brushing our hair and, showing up at our computers and really having a chance to have coffee talk, if you will, both about personal and business in a way that was so unique. And I had actually shared a screenshot of that event. And there were other people in my voiceover circles and other business circles I'm in there were like, that's a fantastic idea. So I just want to acknowledge that and thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you. It was a lot of fun. It was also really fun for my team to source that. By October, and we had actually started sourcing in August. But by August, we were wearing out a bit with the work that we were doing, and we were so exhausted and a little bit just, it wears on you.
Mm.
And so sourcing the boas and sourcing the cards and really thinking about how can we make this really, really fun. And also, I really believe in connecting. I believe in that creates impact. I had heard recently somebody talk about connection economy, and that just really stuck with me. That we are in a place and time where connection is the currency.
Yeah.
So creating connection and seeing people talk about this event was really fun. Was really fun and energizing for my team too. And so literally every single one of us, I have a team of 4 of us total, and every single one of us touched an element of that event, and it was great. And what the audience doesn't know or didn't know is that at that time, it was when shelter in place, we were in between, right? We had shelter in place, then it was loosened, and now we're back in. I was at a client's office, and so I was given a private office to work with them. So I was able to close the door, but the windows, were there's those office windows, so everybody was walking by and with their masks on and seeing me with feather boas on. Yeah, it just was, it really helped them see that, look, this is a different time, but our value proposition and why we do what we do needs to be just as pronounced and perhaps even more so now professionally than it ever has been. And so that was a lot of fun. And I learned so much about the importance of connecting.
Yeah, and what's interesting about this time, because it hasn't all been bad. Now, I really have to preface when I say that, of course, if your bills are being paid and you have a roof over your head and, you're not in crisis mode like so many are,
Mhm.
it's easier to say that. but there have been some good things that have come out of this, and, how we've reshaped business. It used to be unheard of if you heard a kid cry in the background, or someone's, running back of your Zoom session and, because they have to go get something from the other room. It's like
Mhm.
now there's a little bit of empathy and understanding that there is life behind a business woman, business person,
Mhm.
and it's more forgiving, if you will. So you mentioned you're from Eastern Europe, and
Yeah.
I'm so curious because what we're experiencing in this country is pretty much unlike anything, certainly within our generation. But I'm not sure how long you've been here, so maybe you can speak to how long you've been in the United States and whether or not there's anything you've been through that has prepared you for this time. And maybe if you find yourself up against fear, what skill sets you've learned to combat that.
Yeah. So yes, I've been in this country for a minute now. It's coming up to 23 years.
Oh, wow.
Um,
Congratulations.
yeah. So I moved here when I was 19 years old. I was I was an act of rebellion, because my family moved from Romania to Germany. So we immigrated from Romania to a Western country, and that was a very big top priority to my family, even before the fall of the wall. And so when we moved to Germany, I did not have an easy go of that. And for us as a family, we spoke German, but it was a sort of like a Romanian accent, heavy accent German. So my entire life, I grew up with an accent. In Romania, I had an accent because I spoke German and Saxon at home. Then when we moved to Germany, I had an accent, so it felt like I was a foreigner there for sure. And then
Wow.
moving here, obviously, it was very obvious that I was a foreigner. But the other thing, and I just recall that in this moment, to mention, and for whatever it's worth to our listeners here, being a foreigner in America, coming from Europe, it was almost a bit glamorous. We live in California. There are lots of people from South America here, and it feels less glamorous to them. So I've always felt that to be a little bit of an injustice in and of itself. I grew up in Romania, like I mentioned, during communism, pre-fall of the wall. And so when the wall fell and whatever came with that, I recognize that unrest is just part of our human story. And whether it's personal or political, it's really important to stay aware and stay true. And I want to say what that means to me, because I think it means something different for every one of us as we bring different experiences to our life. But for me, what communism and then the fall of the wall taught me is that somehow through it, I'm going to be okay. And I really mean this, I'm actually going to come out better. Now, that doesn't disqualify the incredible losses that are being felt and the price that's being paid by people around us, and or even the individuals who make it through and are better. But it does mean that there's just something innately human about living and thriving no matter what.
Mhm.
And I think that to me is just what holds me together. And so for me living here in the US, I I laugh at this because I've acclimated quite well to the American lifestyle. And I really wanted that. That was very appealing to me when I was here first as an exchange student, at the ripe age of 14 years old, and felt like there's just something different here. There's more that's possible in this country. And I was willing to take that chance, and I had the opportunity to do that. And I had the naivete of a 19-year-old, who was thinking herself quite mature and was going to,
Don't we all at
yeah,
19?
and was going to take the world by, by its horns and just go for it. And I've been incredibly fortunate to have had so far a life that, while I've really been through tremendous tragedies and really hard things, I've always been given grace. I've always had the chance to go again. And that just, I can feel a lump in my throat. That is such a gift. And if there's one thing that I can do better with my work, with my life, is to, in whatever way possible, create opportunity for other people to be better, whatever that looks like for them. Not prescriptive, but with sort of like I'm obsessed with the idea that there is a way to be better and to grow and to make better choices and to live better lives.
And to hold on to hope, which is something that, with everything that you just described, I think we've heard it said before, one of the best educators is traveling,
Mhm.
because you get a chance to get outside of your environment and your culture and get in touch with really what's going on in other cultures and the rest of the world. And to come here at 14 as an exchange student is really brave, considering everything that you just shared with us. And so I'm curious, is there something in the midst of this, in watching how people move through it, either with grace and gratitude, or conversely, the other side,
Yeah.
that you wish folks were mindful of right now as to how we can care for and nurture one another?
Yeah, you mentioned the word earlier, and I think this is sort of this is something that is really obvious to me. You mentioned empathy, and I'm a Type A driver, and it's funny to me being in this conversation with you, because I don't get to see your face, and I don't and our audience doesn't get to see us, and so I'm feeling like I'm sounding very subdued and calm. That's not really how not really how I am on my day to day. I'm a driver. I'm a go getter. I would not say that compassion and sympathy are my go to emotions or ways of seeing the world. But I think what this year has taught me is that empathy isn't just something you feel, but
Mhm.
it's something
Yes.
you take action on. And
Yes.
so empathy, it's really empowering. And whoever is hearing this and is feeling like, but I want to do more, or I don't know what to do, that is your empathy speaking. Because I think that there's so much that we can put our arms around. And when we say we have empathy, and there's nothing more important, I think, than empathy, and to recognize that it requires action. So truly, it's what drives me, and it's given me a bit of permission as a professional woman, a mother. It's given me permission to be this Type A driver that I know I am, and I am far less apologetic about who I am as a result of some things coming into alignment. And this pandemic and what we are going through in this world and in our communities and our nation has just kind of solidified that in for me in a way, if that makes sense. So having empathy and then taking action is exactly what is going to get us through this. That is an expression of hope to me. It gets me so excited and hopeful, and it keeps me going. It's energizing. I don't know if I'm answering your question, but
Yes, you are. And I want to say, I'm glad we can offer your audience, the people who know you, a different side of you. So, hey, if I've served a purpose today, then you're welcome.
no, thank you. Thank you.
But yeah, I think for me, and I know a lot of other people around me, it has done a couple of things this time, in that we don't apologize for ourselves. That doesn't mean we adopt certain arrogant behaviors. It means that life is short. Life is
Yes.
really short. And if we don't get how precious every moment is, because God forbid one of us gets a diagnosis and all the things in front of us that we wanted to do, but we were apprehensive or we were apologetic for, etc. So, yeah, that makes perfect sense. If not now, when?
Yeah.
And the fact that you said that empathy is an action and faith is an action, and love is an action. How
Yeah.
would you know someone loves you unless they express it to you and show you? It's empty words is one thing, but an expression of love is an action. So I'm curious if you have or rely on a particular faith to help you through this time.
Yeah, yes, I do. I am a woman of faith, and I'm a Christian. And I think that that has definitely helped me. And I want to clarify what that means. I think, particularly in my life growing up in communism and having a certain expression of my faith in that environment, and then moving, to the Western world. And it was really through my local church. I grew up Lutheran, and my pastor who saw potential in me. She was a mentor and a woman of just strength. And she inspired me to want to be a woman in the church. And I thought that I was going to, my gosh, if you had asked me at 7 and 17 what I was going to do, and 27 for that matter, I was going to work in the church. And so moving to the United States and experiencing Christianity the American way was really sobering. And I have to tell you, this is one of the very first times I'm actually publicly speaking about this, but it was very, I got caught up in that. I got caught up in wanting a slice of that certainty that that sort of the American Christian way has to offer. And I got really wrapped up in that. And for whatever reason, got kicked out over and again. And it's so forced me. And I use that word in the definition of pressure, and that definition of creating an environment where you are faced with yourself and you have to identify what you're actually about. And for me, being continually rejected by the sort of male-dominated sort of American Christian faith, it forced me to identify myself as in my faith as a Christian and why I would say that I'm a follower of Jesus. And that was a great gift for me. Lots of tears were shed, lots of angry moments were had internally and externally. But I would say that my unrelenting hope that we are made in love and are made to love, and my drive that we are absolutely equal in the sight of love, that has been a great gift to me, and it's been something that's carried me through and has been, I don't know, tried in a way. Because again, back to my driver self, I really fall to I know what to do. I know how to do this. I don't need help. And so in my faith, it requires a lot of humility to say, no, JK, I don't really know. I'm wired to take action. I'm wired to, I'm wired to move, but I don't have all the answers. And I'm not doing this in my own strength. So yeah, my faith has been pivotal at this time. You mentioned also apologizing. There's a song that simply says, I was wrong. I'm sorry, and I love you. And I adopted those lyrics in my apologies. And I have had to apologize a lot. My 15-year-old commented that I'm really good at it because I've had to do it so much.
I really appreciate you sharing that. And to clarify, when I said apologize, I meant for who we are
Mhm.
as God's created individuals.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
I too am a Christian. And it's really interesting how you mentioned the difference between being a Christian in another country and coming here and seeing the Americanized version of it, which I was born and raised here. And I'm having my own struggles with the church right now.
Mhm.
And it's causing me to look at things, certainly with the division in the church and politics and how that's playing out. And what it comes down to is, how is my walk? How am I playing out my faith and love for my fellow man at this time? And you mentioned humility. It doesn't matter how old you get. There's always a dose of humble pie we can eat.
Yeah, and I remember teaching this to my kids and trying to model it. Humility is not a bad word.
No, no, no,
It's
no.
not,
No, it's not.
and it's I think sometimes in certain circles it's used almost like you need more of that. Why don't you go get more of that?
As
A
shaming.
shaming
It's
thing.
almost like a
Uh-huh.
shaming element.
And that really it's sort of like a real great opportunity to be open, right? Like humility is sort of like, I just don't know. I don't know. And so I'm opening myself up to knowing, to learning. And to me, it's something that actually was modeled to me by people in foreign countries. I had the great opportunity to be an exchange student to many, many, many different countries because I grew up like I said, I grew up in Romania, but when we moved to Germany, very quickly, the EU became a conversation. And so we were very much encouraged in this school and this program that I was part of to travel to the EU countries and to our neighboring countries.
Oh, beautiful.
So I remember going to Northern Africa, and Northern Africa is Muslim, and so I remember getting off the plane and just the scent of jasmine and the warmth of the sun and the earth,
Mm.
and I truly fell in love with Africa. And the reason I'm in America is because I was not allowed to go to Africa. By my parents didn't allow that. They said, you have to stay in school. You're not going to Africa. You're not going to just take a year off and spend time in Africa. That's silly. So I diverted plans to come to America. But that's for another story. So I remember being in Northern Africa in this Muslim nation, and I was surprised by that. I had never really been around that kind of an environment, and I had never been around that faith. And so learning from the people of Tunisia how to be curious and how to be integrated in your life, that was very humbling. And so it was a place of curiosity, or humility became a place of curiosity for me. It was really one of those things that I will never forget. I was 17 years old and learned that even though everything can be so different from what I'm used to, there's so much goodness, there's so much sincerity, there's so much emotional intelligence that goes into the practice of faith, even if it's not your own faith.
Right.
And so I think of humility as an opportunity to be curious.
What a beautiful story. I completely smelled the jasmine. I felt the warm air. And although I have never traveled to Africa and would love to, isn't it interesting your life took the turn that it did, that you landed and were there and immersed in the culture and went, I want to move here. And yet here you are in Northern California. And it's just one of those turns in life that you just look at and go, well, it could have gone this way, but now I'm here. And yet your life was full here. You have a really good and beautiful impact on the community here, and in particular, women in business, which is why I reached out to you. I mean, after your boas and brew and just the creativity and the energy and, first meeting you at the one and only luncheon I got to go to for Sonoma
Yeah,
County professional women because the lockdown happened shortly thereafter.
sure did.
So what do you do, Bianca, to take care of yourself in the midst of all your responsibilities?
I love that you're asking that question. And, Cheryl, I asked that question too.
Oh, do you?
Um,
Oh, good.
I do. I do. And so I hope you hear me when I say this, and I know your audience will relate. I work with women. I love working with women professionals, but the majority of my clients are male executives. And so I tried very hard to get away from that world. It's just not what happens. My clients are male executives. And one of the things that I get to notice is that we don't ask men how they practice self-care. We ask women that question. And this is something that I've noticed over the years. And it's such an important question to ask. And then also, what I have noticed, and this is just through my own lens, I don't know that it's a good thing to highlight self-care for professional women especially, or just working women, any woman who wakes up in the morning. If you take care of 3 children, 2 children, 1 child. I've been a single mother of a 1 child, and I thought I was going to just lose my wits. But no matter what you do, we ask the self-care question. I wonder if it's just another thing for a woman to worry about and to feel like she has to do another thing to accomplish. So while I also ask that question, I find myself often answering it this way. Self-care for me is not an action that I take separate from my life.
Good.
I love we have this tradition in our home with my oldest daughter. We do walk and talk happy hour. We walk around the block, and she's now 21. Now she can have whatever beverage she enjoys. But up until she was 21, this started when she was 14 years old. She would have her soda water, and I would have a glass of wine, and we would walk in the neighborhood, and we would chat. That to me was self-care. Being able to be on a phone call with my girlfriend. I just was on a phone call last week with her. we talk till 1 o'clock in the morning. Super irresponsible if you have a 6 a.m.
Yes.
wake up.
The next day, we go, "Oh, it's good conversation."
Yeah, but that was to me, that was truly self-care. So what I have learned from my clients who are execs and happen to be having a male experience on planet Earth, I've learned that self-care is just something you integrate into your life. And so I've focused more and more on integration and alignment. And then seeing some things that maybe qualify as self-care as just necessities, like hydrating myself. That's a necessity.
Mhm.
I've learned that working out is a necessity for me
Yes.
because it's just part of my mental health experience or regimen that I have to take care of. I don't know if I'm answering your question, but I almost want to shift the conversation. Even though I participate in it, I ask the same question. How do you take care of yourself? But boy, it's just another thing for us to do sometimes.
Well, you answered in such a unique and wonderful way. When I ask self-care, I'm not talking about, "Oh, I get manicure pedicures once a week."
Yeah,
I mean, for some, that is self-care, right?
totes.
Because
Yeah,
if they're caring for children and
yeah.
homeschooling, and yeah. What I really meant was the time you take for yourself and integrating. That is such a great answer because one of the things that I have a new accountability partner for this year, and
Mhm.
the first thing I sent her was not a list of things I want to achieve.
Yeah,
It's a list of things that are really non-negotiables that I want to incorporate in my life
love
that
that.
go under the title of self-care. And
Yeah,
you mentioned working out, hydrating, getting enough sleep, things that seem like basics, but it's caring for yourself enough so that you can put on your oxygen mask first
mhm,
so that you can show up for your life and show up for others.
yeah,
Because so many times when women and or men in caregiving mode, because if a man is a high level executive, a lot of times the diet is bad, they're not exercising, they're not practicing self-care. And I'm really glad that more people are actually asking men this.
yes,
We tend to think that, oh, they're men, they're strong, they're blah, blah, blah. No, they are vulnerable. They feel probably at times like, do I want to put my feet on the floor this morning and show up? Who can I go to talk about the fact that I maybe just don't want to do this today? And I don't know how to do this today.
mhm.
So,
Yeah, I think it's part of the conversation of like that gender, breaking down the gender bias, and and
yes,
and being
yes.
able to acknowledge that self-care is not something that is uniquely female and has hardly anything to do with getting a facial, although girls sign me up.
When we can do that again.
Yeah,
Yes, I
yeah, I
understand.
was admiring the roots of my hair this morning. I'm really glad this is a podcast, not a video. But that we are having a human experience here on Earth. And I have a dear friend who loves herself. She's growing succulents. I don't know how else to put it. And I can't grow a thing. I've grown 2 children, and I feel that that should be enough.
Yeah.
But in terms of plants, and so she gave me this tip, and she said, water Wednesday. And so every Wednesday, I know to water my plants, and that's what I do. And that is the one thing they need is water to thrive and to grow. And it's remarkable how very little, once a week, I spend 10 minutes and I water all my plants. That moment, that intentional action keeps these things alive, these little lovely plants in my overpriced pots. I think of self-care. Self-care is that intentional action, right? Just like empathy is an action, self-care is an action. You mentioned earlier, love is an action, care is an action. I think we're moving away from all these sort of inspirational quotes that we don't act upon. They are all
Mhm.
over Instagram and Pinterest and signs at Target. Any store now has inspirational signs. We need to move away from just agreeing to acting. And self-care, if it's an action for you, I applaud it. And it looks different for every woman, and it looks different for every person.
Yes, it does. Amen on that. I mean, we can inspirationally quote ourselves into insanity.
Yeah. Well, it
You know?
becomes a comparison trap, you know? It
Yes.
really does
Mhm.
become this sort of, am I doing this right? And that's what I meant to say earlier. It's just another thing that you're not measuring up to. And I don't know about you, but I don't need another thing that I don't measure up to. I'm like trying to let go of things, not borrow new trouble.
Amen on that one. Yes. I mean, I've never heard imposter syndrome so much in my life, and it's because of that. It's because of how do we compare, and I can't do it that way. And, using all these self defeating thoughts and phrases because of that. So, yeah, not measuring up. So, I appreciate you shining light on that. And you mentioned a lot of things that bring you joy. I mean, obviously, you really enjoy the work that you do.
I love the work
You
I
have
do.
great energy. You're very giving to your community. But is there something more so than something else that brings you joy?
I will tell you, I'm very much about connection and relationship. And so I'm fortunate, truly fortunate, to spend an enormous amount of time with my children. I have a 21-year-old daughter and a 15-year-old daughter. And they are such very unique humans, different expressions. I see myself in them. Obviously, I'm their mom, and I'd like to just plaster myself like wallpaper all over them and project the glory and wonder. But truly, they are so different from each other and so different from me, and we all see each other in each other, and
In
it's
each
great.
other, yeah.
But then I also, if you follow me on Instagram, particularly Instagram, you will know that I am very much obsessed with my dog, which is not something I was prepared for. So, 5 years ago, if you had shared a story about your lovely dog, I don't know, Cheryl, if you have a dog.
I don't. I would love to, but where I live doesn't
Yeah, there's
really
so
allow for
many
that.
people who have their love affairs with their little dogs. Special food for their dog, special outfits for their dog, special all the things for the dog. And I would roll my eyes, at least internally. I would think, what a colossal waste of your energy. And
Yeah, get a
get
life,
a
will you?
life. And then I got this dog for my children. We have a dog, we had a dog, and still have that dog, and then wanted another dog for these children, and we are inseparable. So Bo is his name. His actual name, if you want to get it correct, is Bo Blue Barrington.
Excuse me? How did that
It
happen?
happened because I love a good bee. Bees are my jam. Bianca Broos bees. I sit at home
Well, for
Yes.
obvious reasons,
So
yes.
Bo Blue, and then Barrington because he looks like a little teddy bear. And he just really is. You asked about joy. He is. I call him my joy button. He just is so much joy. And here's what I learned about the reason I'm telling you the long-winded story of not, wanting dogs or not thinking that I would be a quote unquote dog person. And I'm still not a dog person. I'm a Bo person. That joy is just like that, isn't it? It just comes in and kind of crashes into your world
Mm.
in very unexpected ways. And so this is maybe my 3-year-old's dream of becoming a pastor that speaks here, but that's what joy and tragedy have in common, and it's good that way because tragic things come about in unexpected ways. And so does joy. And when you are least expecting it, it comes into your life and is a source of strength and a source of hope and a source of humor. If you can laugh in tough times, my goodness, what a gift that is. So Bo is a huge huge source of joy for me and for my family to see that I have turned into a bow lady, a dog person.
You gotta have a boas and bow party.
And listen, don't you think that I did not?
You haven't dressed
Don't you think I did? There's a fine line between your joy and then other people's joy. And I feel like if it's your joy and you're imposing it on other people, it becomes ridiculous. So I walk that line. I walk that line.
I just love the answer to that question because you are so right. I mean, whether it's joy or tragedy and you mentioned laughter. I just read actually in a devotion this morning about laughter and how important it is, and especially in tough times.
Yes.
Gosh, we need to laugh more. And it's hard. I mean, sometimes you got to pull out every stop that's blocking you, but find a way to just have a good laugh or have a joyous moment in the midst of just insanity. And sometimes it is funny because if you don't laugh, the alternative is really just kind of getting in a fetus position, and not doing anything.
Especially now in these times, I've worked with a lot of people and personally also have experienced this emotion more than I'm usually prone to, and that's this feeling of anger.
Mm.
And I think when anger comes up, acknowledging that and not covering it or small talking it in any kind of way. My personal experience with anger is that what helps it so much, it kind of not dissolves it, but it almost like frazzles it, like pulls it apart in a way. Is humor, is laughter. Um, Again, not glossing over anything, but laughing and finding the emotions we feel, that they're almost like helping each other, or kind of counterbalancing. I would think that laughter and humor have been a great counterbalance to some of the things that have caused me to feel angry, because it brings me back to what can I do about that? What am I? That curiosity. What is actually something I can do? And I believe that we can all do something, no matter what the situation is. There's always something that we can contribute, and there's always something, even if our contribution is learning, even if our contribution is listening, there's something we can contribute to whatever it is that we're going through individually or collectively.
Gosh, is that an important thing to keep in mind? It really is because there is a lot of anger right now. And I have dealt with more anger the past year than
Mhm.
I probably have. And it's very easy to be reactive
Yeah,
and act out of emotion
yeah.
as opposed to taking a step back and you just so eloquently express, there's a lesson. What's the lesson?
Mhm,
What do you need to listen to?
mhm.
What do you need to speak into, maybe not speak into? And there's always a choice every single day of what do we do with these opportunities that come along. And I think sometimes I'll speak for myself. I can totally stink up the room and blow it, absolutely blow that test.
Yeah, really good
And
at that.
with
Yeah.
God's grace, have the chance to do it differently the next time. So we're wrapping up our time, and I'm really, this has been delightful for me, really unexpected. Some of the things the way you've answered, none of my other guests have ever answered in the way you have. And that's why I love hearing people's stories and having their perspective on a common time. But because we all walk differently through this life and have come from different places, of course, we're going to have different perspectives. So I have a couple more questions, and I think you've definitely touched upon this in a couple of your answers, but what makes you hopeful?
Oh, I just really believe in goodness. I think there's goodness in our world, and it's worth pursuing. And I also think, we mentioned both, we share our faith. I've been thinking a lot about creation, and this is probably a big conversation for your audience, but just for sake of this conversation, for this answer, the story, just a good story. When you read the creation story in Genesis, just that there was chaos and that there was darkness, and that in all of that, good could be spoken into, and something came of that. And so I've been thinking a lot about that, because I feel today we often feel like the chaos and the darkness and the unrest is sort of hanging over us and it's enveloping us, and there's just nothing we can do. And everything we do feels futile, and just what is this going to come to? That perhaps there is something in the chaos and in the unrest and in the darkness that we can speak into. I think that words are very powerful, and I think that the human connection is very powerful, and it is a mark of goodness. And so I am unwaveringly convinced that there is goodness, and that we can speak into this chaos and into the unrest, and we can create new things out of this.
If there was a soundtrack to your life,
Mm.
Bianca, what would be on it?
So I'll tell you, I am the number one Celine Dion fan.
I'm only laughing because that's the first of all, I just started asking that question because music is such a big part of my life that I thought, oh, I'd be
Uh-huh.
curious what it would be for other people. And I just I guess I didn't expect that
That,
response.
well, and I am not just her biggest fan, but I'm also an ambassador because I fear that not a lot of people are confident enough in themselves. Really, is what it boils down to admit to the world that they are in fact Celine Dion fans. Everybody just wants to be like, no, I like somebody else. No, you do. You love Celine Dion, and you just need to say it. Uh, so, all kidding aside. My soundtrack will, of course, would be sung by her. But then the other more truthful answer is that I grew up with music being something that was smuggled into the country. And so music to me, I'm not musical. I don't remember song lyrics or artists. My daughter, my 15-year-old, is a genius at remembering song lyrics and artists. But I think that there's a new sound for each part of my life, almost like a movie. I think of my life in that way, that there's a storyline and that there are different moments that are sung by different artists. I'm a very melancholy person. While I'm an extrovert, I also very much listen to, I'm all about the singer-songwriter. Brandy Carlisle is
Love
who I
Brandy
listen
Carlisle.
to. Yes. And so I cry a lot because I think it's just part of how I process. And so I'm a person that listens to classical music and to music that is very melancholy. And then when I want to be tapping into my expressive self, that is where Celine comes in, and she is my little firecracker spirit animal.
Have you ever met her?
No, I have not. And I actually will admit to you that I'm not her number one fan. I have met fans of hers, and I'm no, my fanship pales in comparison. So, I just, part of my personality is to think of myself as the best. And so this is an easy one. Being the number one fan is an easy thing to say, so I say it.
Well, what a delightful conversation. And again, I really appreciate you taking your time in your busy day and that we found a way to connect. And, I mean, I know there's other things we haven't even touched on. We haven't really talked about the Be Better Network, but I am going to put all your information in show notes. So for those who want to get a hold of you and reach out to you, because you just need one more thing on your plate, I'm sure.
You know what? It's good to connect, and I want to just thank you for being so persistent. And you've been persistent and kind, and I just think that that is such a wonderful quality. I don't know you very well, but I would love to hear from you at some point about how that came about. So I've listened to your podcast, and I would love to hear you talk yourself through some of the questions that you ask your guests, because the quality of persistence and kindness, and even in your voice, to hear that is such a gift to me, but I think to all of your listeners.
Oh, Bianca, thank you so very much. I really appreciate that. And in a nutshell, it goes back to two things: getting older and my faith. The closer
Yeah.
in my walk with God, and also getting older and realizing I can't change things in the past, but I can be aware of who I am today and hopefully affect a more positive outcome and influence on those around me now and in the future. So, and when we can, we'll get together and have some coffee talk. We can wear our boas, or we can have
So we're out there.
whatever beverage. Hey, it's about embracing the joy of the moment. And if people want to know what we're on when we're walking down the street with boas and having having a beverage of choice, I'm just infringing upon your happy hour. I hope you know that.
I mean, that is my dream, and I have been creating fantasies in my mind about the kind of events that I want to create when this all is over, and I know that it's coming at a great cost to a lot of people, but I also know it will be over, and we will learn, and we will continue to do good work together, and we will continue to laugh and be humble and ask a lot of curious questions, so we can make next good decisions and be better.
Yes, we will. And on that beautifully positive note, I will thank you and wish you a wonderful day, a wonderful winter's day here in Sonoma County. And
January is how I heard it put.
what you heard it as what?
January, like as in
January. Oh,
June.
that's a new one. Okay, yeah, it's kind of like what's happening. So, and then we'll look forward to connecting at the next confab or whenever we can. But in the meantime, I just wish you the best and going to follow you on Instagram now. I actually just glanced at your page and your beautiful bow
Yes.
while we were talking, and that was a really great story. And again, it's a delight to have you here, and I look forward to just getting to know you more as we move about the cabin in Sonoma County and connect in life in however way we can.
I really appreciate you, Cheryl. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. Stay strong, and yeah, I cannot wait to see you in person soon.
Thank you, Bianca.
Thank
God
you.
bless you.
God bless you too. Bye bye, Cheryl.
Bye-bye. Thank you for joining me for this week's episode of 19 Stories. I hope you've enjoyed my guest, Bianca Broos, as much as I have. Join me next week when my guest will be singer, songwriter, voice artist, host, and podcast producer Jody Krangle. I'd also like to thank the following news outlets for the use of their clips in so aptly painting the picture of the fear that we're facing during this pandemic. BBC, PBS, Now This, UNESCO, and Some Good News. I especially want to thank Joel and Luke Smallbone, otherwise known as the group for King and Country, for allowing me to use an excerpt of their song Together, which could not be a more hopeful and inspiring song for such a time as this. Finally, I'll leave you with the following from Proverbs 23:18. Surely there is a future, and your hope will not be cut off. Thank you again for joining me today. Feel free to offer feedback or a story idea at 19stories@soundsatchelstudios.com. Visit my website at soundsatchelstudios.com, via Instagram at CherylHollingVO. I look forward to sharing more stories on the next episode of 19 Stories From Fear to Hope. Until then, stay healthy and hopeful.
Together with our differences, together we are bolder, braver, stronger.